Alright, so today we're having a look at Massacre at Central High. Now, I saw this film when I was around 15, and since then I've always classed it as one of the worst films I've ever seen, and I have seen a lot of crap. So let's have a look. Massacre at Central High is a 1976 American horror film directed by René Daldar. Daldar was a protege of Russ Meyer, the guy that directed a lot of sleazy sexploitation films in the 60s, such as Faster Pussycat Kill Kill and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Massacre at Central High currently holds a 6.2 on IMDb and 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the film starts out with our main character David jogging, and we get a very cliche shot. We then cut over to a school where a guy is painting a swastika on someone's locker. The locker's owner and his friends catch him and give him a hard time about it. Our main character David intervenes, and it turns out he's the new kid at school and he's looking for a certain classroom, but no one helps him except a girl named Teresa. Bit creepy there, Dave. David finds the room he was looking for, and an old friend of his called Mark introduces him to everyone being three other people: Bruce, Craig, and Paul. They seem to be in some sort of privileged group and they welcome David in. The group then meet up outside in the car park and we learn that David is a sprinter and wants to be an athlete. They decide to take David in their van to show him around. We get nearly 2 minutes of driving when they hear an old car driven by a guy at school called Rodney. The gang stop Rodney, steal his car and wreck it. This is where we get the impression that this group are a bunch of dicks and bullies. We get more hints towards this as they force a fat guy called Oscar up a rope in PE with a knife and then beat him up in the shower room. David doesn't like this and walks out. We also learn around this time that Mark and Teresa are a couple. We see the bullies swimming and picking on a guy called Spoonie. David talks to Spoonie about standing up for himself, but he says there's no way and the bullies are too powerful a group. The next day David is driving to school and he sees Rodney, now carless, walking and he picks him up. He's nice to him and agrees to help him fix up his car. We then see the bullies abuse a librarian, and David again steps in to help. Mark confronts David about why he's helping people, and he says that Bruce, the leader of the gang, doesn't like it. Later, we see the gang about to rape two of Teresa's friends. Teresa tries to help them but fails. David appears, and he and Bruce fight. David wins, and he and Teresa go for a walk on the beach. It's suddenly night, and the bullies are about to go beat up David, but Mark stops them and says he'll talk to him. He goes over to the beach and sees David and Teresa skinny dipping in the sea. This annoys him, so he goes back and says David wouldn't cooperate and they should get him, but not now. The next day, I assume, and the bullies walk in on David under Rodney's car. They argue, and Bruce kicks David, who slides into the car's jack and it falls on his leg, crushing it. Sometime later, and Mark and Teresa are talking about David. Apparently he won't see anyone while he's in the hospital, and Teresa reveals that when they went skinny dipping, she wanted to have sex, but he refused because of Mark. Back at school, and we see the bullies getting a table laid for them, and they have this big medieval bowl of fruit. Bit weird. And we also learn that David will be back soon. Everyone seems to be talking about him, and it seems he's become somewhat of a martyr. David comes back to school, and he had to lose the leg, so he could no longer run. The bullies go hand gliding, but David cuts one of the cables on Bruce's hand glider and he falls into a telegraph pole and dies. Later, Mark and Teresa are talking on the beach. For some reason, Mark suspects David and thinks that everyone's going to die. Not entirely sure how he knows this. At school, Craig is going swimming. David cuts the lights though, so Craig just dives into a pool in the dark. Idiot. The pool had been drained, and Craig is dead. This just leaves Mark and Chin Man. Mark and Teresa take Paul to the beach, but he acts like a dick and falls asleep in his van. David, even though crippled, manages to push the van over a hill. It rolls off a cliff and explodes, killing Paul and his chin. David springs upon Mark and tells him he will kill him next. Now at school, everything seems to be lovely. Teresa is concerned for Mark though, and she goes to talk to David, who's asleep in a shed. He agrees not to kill Mark. At school though, it seems that the bullied are becoming the bullies and are wanting to conspire with David to take over the school, as everyone seems to know that David is the killer. More people start dying though, as the librarian is killed by hearing aid and Oscar is exploded in his locker. Spoonette and the two near rape girls go to the beach to have a threesome, but a Crash Bandicoot style boulder crushes them. After a stupidly dark shot, Mark confronts David in his shed. David admits to killing more people because they were all turning into dicks just like the bullies were, and he's also crazy now. He says he plans to blow up the school which is hosting a dance that night, and he locks both Mark and Teresa in his shed. After some boring school dance shots, Mark and Teresa escape. They run to the dance and meet with David to try and convince him not to do it. He eventually agrees and goes to get the bomb. He runs outside with it and explodes, killing himself. We zoom into a police light and the film ends. So, what did I think to the film the second time around? Is it any better? No, it's terrible. It may even be worse than I was remembering. My main issue with this film is that it's boring. Boring story, boring shots, boring music. Oh god, the music is awful. Boring characters and just overall paced terribly. The acting isn't great, but it isn't bad either, so you can't really laugh at it or enjoy it. And the deaths are terrible, you see nothing. Everything ends in an explosion pretty much, which for a film with this sort of small budget is very underwhelming. The characters as well, oh man, they're so two-dimensional. The bullies are just bullies, that's it. David's like a saint, and then after his accident he's nothing but crazy. A complete flip with nothing in between. It's like all his original personality was in his left leg. The bullied are just as bad. They go from meek to shit in a matter of seconds. It has the potential to be something interesting and clever, but it just jumps from one thing to the next with no time to build up anything, so you just can't invest, making it, keyword here, boring. Right, now on to the release. It's okay. The aspect ratio is fine, the print isn't great, it has some VHS flickers and decoloration, but it's watchable. And now for the casing. Let's start with this tagline. Right, just think about that for a second. Okay, yeah, it's shit. We also get a little quote from Variety magazine. Violence drenched. I think they may have watched the wrong film. There's hardly any violence in this. The description on the back is weird again. It's justified text, so we get the weird spacing issues, and for some reason they thought brooding and twisted could be a sentence all on its own. We also get this warning here, not for the squeamish. To be fair, I think the squeamish should be fine with this. It's the tamest film in the Dead of Night collection I've watched so far. We also get filmography again, of course, although I must say the runtime is pretty much spot on. Special features time, and again, we get nothing. Filmographies and some galleries of film stills and VHS art. Useless. Overall then, I think this is shit. Now Roger Ebert gave this a favourable review, saying it was well crafted and an allegory of fascism. Be that as it may, it's still a boring watch that scrimps on any of the fun of a horror film and instead keeps you checking how long's left. I would not recommend this.